Hello, you're very welcome back to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by the usual crew of Adrian, Clarke, and Mark O'Hare. And Adrian, we'll hand over straight to you. Look, it's a Premier League podcast. We will briefly touch on the Arsenal last night. They were impressive in the end, although there was a nervous 40 minutes or so. You were at the game.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, not many people got to see this one, did they? But it was, not a lot happened in the first 35, 40 minutes. Everton were quite comfortable and were playing pretty well, I have to say, defensively. But then Bukayo Saka scored a great goal, lovely sort of angled drive. And from there on in, I just think Everton's belief caved in and Arsenal soared. And yeah, it was 4-0 in the end. It was a pretty clinical, ruthless display. And one other thing I pick up on is I don't think Arsenal had to overly extend themselves. Obviously, it's a disadvantage playing in the week when you've got a weekend game. I didn't feel it was a fast-paced game. I didn't feel they had to really burn off that many calories, if so to speak, to get the 3 points. So hopefully they won't be too jaded for the game against Bournemouth.
Firstly, Mark, that must be the earliest mention of Arsenal in any of our podcasts, surely.
I think you're purposely trying to beat your previous record, Dan, because it seems to be getting earlier and earlier every week. So fair play.
I might start my next intro with Arsenal, top of the Premier League. But look, Mark, we will focus on City when we cover Manchester City versus Newcastle. But we were talking off air. I just think it's worth very briefly. Producer Ryan will get up the Premier League title odds in a second. But Arsenal are around 1.98, as you can see on screen on Matchbook. Man City 2.3 for the title, and of course United in there, who are playing phenomenally at the moment. You have to say 17.0, Mark.
Yeah, well, I think if you are keen on Arsenal to win the Premier League this season, you want to back them to win the title, I think now is the time to strike. They've got that 5-point advantage now. Still have to go to the Etihad, obviously, where they'll be pretty big underdogs to win that match against Manchester City. But if you look at what's to come, there's 4 pretty winnable games for Arsenal in the next 4, starting this weekend against Bournemouth, and they go away to Fulham, which, okay, it's a tricky game, but they should be getting points in that fixture. Palace at home, Leeds at home, and then you go to Anfield, which is obviously the place where Arsenal have traditionally tended to struggle. But you compare it with Manchester City this weekend, hosting Newcastle. That's not an easy or straightforward winnable fixture. Palace away, West Ham home, then they host Liverpool, which they've had issues with in the past themselves. So you've already got 2 tricky games for City in the next 4. Arsenal should be looking to get 10 points at least from the next 4 fixtures. So there's no real reason why that gap should get any shorter. And in theory, the price will get tighter because the games are running out for Manchester City to close that gap. So if you do want to get on board with Arsenal, I think now is the time. 1.98. It's not a bet I'd be placing, but if you are into sort of trading or want to do something like that, then there is an opportunity to get Arsenal on side. I don't see them getting any bigger anytime soon.
Okay, yeah, fascinating how that all plays out. Manchester City, of course, in Champions League action. I think that's Tuesday week, but we'll be recording the next couple of Mondays ahead of the Champions League podcast, and Miguel Delaney will be back with us. Before we get going, if you are listening on the podcast, we would appreciate you heading over to YouTube video. Let us know what you think of the guys, Adrian, Mark, bit of feedback for the show, and do hit that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. It would be much appreciated. Other than that, guys, we'll get straight into it. 4 games we're covering. The first one is the big one at Anfield, Sunday 4:30 game. It's Liverpool at home to Manchester United. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have at matchbook.com. You can back Liverpool 2.54, Manchester United 2.9. The draw is available at 11-4 or 3.75, and both teams' score is quite short, 1.6, considering recent Liverpool United games and down through the years. Draw no bet, Liverpool is favoured in that mark at 1.82, and the total is 2.5, shaded a good bit towards the over at 1.69. So, Mark, we'll head over to you this one firstly. And were you surprised by the prices at all when you saw them initially?
Not massively. The market's telling us that Man United right now are the better of the 2 teams, and I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Head-to-head record is pretty strong in Liverpool's favour at Anfield when these 2 teams meet in the Premier League or across all competitions, actually, really. And Liverpool have tended to raise their game at Anfield regardless for the most part this campaign. I think they've got the 4th best home record in terms of points return. Returning cavalry as well will boost the home team. Ibrahima Kamate is a huge influence at centre half alongside Van Dijk, and his return midweek was really welcome for them. Diego Jota starting as well. Darwin Núñez back from injury as well. So I can see why people might fancy Liverpool. We were pretty sceptical, and I remain so, about their wins against Everton and Newcastle for differing reasons. And then we saw them get blown out of the water despite that excellent start against Real Madrid. Last weekend, we saw a bit something a bit different from Liverpool, I think. They seemed kind of reluctant to engage in any sort of chaos. They look to try and control the game at Palace much more, and they don't look as threatening when they're sort of holding on to possession and trying to thread intricate passes through a deep line defence. And it didn't really work for them at all. You know, the Liverpool of old, which we've seen and love so much, thrive in chaos, thrive in the intensity and ferocity of their press and a sort of heavy metal football when turning possession over. We've not seen that a huge amount this season. Obviously, defensively, though, there's been a lack of confidence. Konaté's return will improve that. The midfield hasn't got the legs to play as it has done in the past. So that's kind of broken down, and that's left the forward line a little bit starved of service, really. But I guess there is an opportunity for them to arrest that slide. You know, a big game against your biggest rivals at home with key players back fit and available. But ultimately, I kind of agree with the market that Man United are the better team right now, and they're the more trustworthy proposition. And I think trust is the important word here. I can't really trust Liverpool at those prices, even with the +0 start at 182. I think a much wiser selection is to back United plus a quarter, a very similar price at 179. Means you get the draw on side, which I think is a very big runner actually at 375. I think it will be tight. I think it will be very competitive. I think it's hard to not be impressed by the work that Erik ten Hag has done at United in such a short turnaround, really. A disastrous opening fortnight, but he's really sort of turned that ship around, got out of form players performing superbly well, new players integrating excellently, just seem to be sort of moving in the right direction. They might not be as dominant as an Arsenal or Man City, but they're very capable, efficient, effective at what they do. Just 3 Premier League defeats in 21 since that opening fortnight, a better points per game record than Man City in that 21 game sample. Their only Premier League defeat since November was the last gasp loss at Arsenal. They've got the best points tally since the World Cup break as well. They're scoring pretty consistently and fluently. They scored in 22 of 24 Premier League games this season. No obvious or outstanding issues in terms of suspensions or injuries outside of Christian Eriksen. Casemiro, of course, came off the bench again midweek, so he'll be relatively fit and fresh and ready to go. And I just like the energy, the combativeness, if that's a word, the spirit, the bite that United have shown in recent weeks, particularly in the cup final. They were quite happy to get involved in that scrap with Newcastle. Saw them again midweek, the likes of Martinez kind of getting in and amongst it, just to try and unsettle opposition players. And I just think they're a bit more shrewd and a bit more streetwise, really, at the moment compared to Liverpool. So, I think go back to the word trust. I think United are a bit more trustworthy to get them on side with the draw as well at 179, knowing we'll make money if United avoid defeat.
Okay, yeah, very good case for Manchester United, Adrian. Follow that because you are on the same bet, but I don't know if you can add anything to what Marcus said because he's really kind of nailed it. Go on, go on, maybe just a little bit on the Liverpool side of things, Adrian. Like Mark touched on this. I guess outside Madrid, they've been looking okay the last 3 or 4 games.
Well, 4 clean sheets in a row, I think, in the Premier League, 5 in 6. So they have tightened things up at the back domestically, but I can't get that 5-2, you know, that heavy defeat to Real Madrid out of my head. Manchester United are every bit as good as Real Madrid at the moment, aren't they, in terms of the form? You know, certainly one of the best formed teams in Europe. They've dumped Barcelona out of the Europa League, and you know, Real Madrid are behind them in the title race. So yeah, if that's a gauge, this is going to be a really hard game for Liverpool. I do think that Konaté's return makes a heck of a difference. Yeah, Gomez has been having a torrid campaign, really. Trent Alexander-Arnold against Rashford. It's a matchup, isn't it? One to savour, and you know, you got to back Rashford really to come out on top in that particular duel based on form. He's also got a pretty good record against Liverpool, Marcus Rashford. Although I think most, if not all, of his goals in these games have come at Old Trafford, but he does like the fixture. Yeah, look, he's in form. Bruno Fernandes is in great form. I was looking at some of the stats earlier in the week, and in terms of chances created in open play, Bruno Fernandes is 10 ahead of everyone in the Premier League. Kevin De Bruyne is second, and then you've got Odegaard and Saka at Arsenal, and then Mo Salah. So Bruno is having a sort of understatedly excellent campaign as well. I think Mark touched on it, used the word streetwise. I would say that would be the difference between the two sides. I think United will be ready for this. I think Ten Hag will come up with a game plan. Again, Mark used the word trust. Who do you trust this season more? Is it Ten Hag or is it Jurgen Klopp? I think you have to say you place your faith in Ten Hag to get things right. So yeah, look, they could come a cropper here, Manchester United. Anyone can at Anfield, but yeah, as soon as I saw this fixture was on the slate, I wanted to get United on a handicap, and that quarter goal head start for me is the difference. So yeah, I'm all for that. The one negative, I just need to flag that up, is that Fulham are the only side in the top 12 that Manchester United have won away at so far this season. They've got a lot of sort of testing away fixtures to come. Not really proven themselves to be consistent winners on the road against the top teams in the Premier League this season. My eyes tell me that they can get a good result at Anfield, but let's see.
Yeah, fascinating game for sure. It's the big game of the weekend. It's Liverpool at home to Manchester United, Sunday 4:30, and we're going to lock in Manchester United plus quarter of a goal start at around 1.79. The selection of both Mark and Adrian's nice, easy one to start with, guys. We'll move on to the next game, which is Saturday 12:30. Slightly different opinions here, so we'll take a look at the betting that we have at Matchbook.com, and you can currently back Manchester City 1.49 in the match odds. Newcastle United 7.8. The draw is 4.9. Both teams to score yes is available at 1.86 with no. The underdog in that market. You can back Newcastle United on the Asian handicap line plus 1.25 goal at around 10 to 11 or 1.91 with the goal line at 2.5 shaded to the over. So Adrian, take it away on this one. Manchester City and under 3.5, 4.5 has been a staple of the podcast. It's always a dangerous bet, but you do like it here. You do fancy City to get out on top, but only just.
It's very dangerous when you're backing Manchester City to go under 3.5 goals, but that's kind of where I want to go with this one because it's Newcastle and because Newcastle have such a strong defensive record. You know, the way they went to Emirates Stadium and sport the game was impressive, and I think they can do something similar in this match. But you've got to fancy City, haven't you? I know it's an awkward one. And it could be a tight game. Absolutely, it could. But their home record is 10 wins, 1 draw, just the 1 defeat so far this season. Manchester City, they're pretty formidable on their own track. Actually, only 4 of their 12 home games have gone under 3.5. So it is a dangerous bet, this suggestion. But at the odds 2.38, I think, yeah, you're getting a little bit of value there. Back in City at home, you know, they've won 10 of 12 at home. They're heavy favourites to win this one. 2.38 appeals to me quite a lot, actually. As for Newcastle, I just think, yeah, while they can make it competitive, you can't back them to score goals, can you, at the moment? I've just written a piece, just filed a piece on Newcastle, looking at the way the goals have dried up across the last 7. This year. So this year alone, Newcastle are way behind. They're over 8 goals behind their XG. Their conversion rate is 4%, if you exclude blocks. So their finishing has sort of fallen off a cliff. Now, it might reverse. You know, they're actually creating as many chances as they have done all season. They're just being more wasteful. Which you look at the middle patch of the season so far, that middle segment where they won 7 of 8, their conversion rate was over 26%, and they were punching way above their expected goals there. So things have just leveled out a little bit for them. They rely still too much on Trippier, not enough creators in the team. I think they've got work to do in that department. So while I think they can make this a close game, I don't think they can win it. And I would back City to claim all 3 points. So yeah, that's my selection. Yeah, Man City and under 3.5.
Okay, yeah, currently available at 2.38. And over to you for this one, Mark. You selected Newcastle plus 1.5 goal on the Asian handicap line at around 1.73. I guess for those sitting down on a Saturday lunchtime looking for a bet, but wanting to maybe support Newcastle, but not in a win or draw capacity, this is probably the safest way in if they are that way inclined.
Yeah, look, it's not a strong view. It's not a strong opinion either. I thought Newcastle could and would be competitive at Wembley last weekend, and I think they were, despite the final result and the final outcome. Thought United were a bit too short to support at 2.3 at a neutral venue, considering all the circumstances. But yeah, the goals were a set piece goal and an own goal really that settled matters. I thought Newcastle competed well overall. There were plenty of flashes of promise. They moved the ball well. They attacked with purpose and looked pretty lively. Things did break down a little bit in the final third, and that has been the issue, as Adrian points out. And I actually did some sort of digging myself actually on this. And they've in the last 7 Premier League matches, they've had 97 shots but scored just 3 goals. But since the World Cup break, only 2 teams have created more big chances or had more shots in the box than Newcastle. So it's not a chance creation issue. It's just a conversion concern at the minute. And obviously, they've only won twice in that time. That's an 8-game sample. They've lost back-to-back games 2-0, but I think on both occasions, against Liverpool and against United, they were probably better than the scoreline suggested. They've already been to Emirates and Old Trafford and 0-0 draws. Only Liverpool have beaten in the Premier League. So they are starting to fall back a little bit into the pack. But in terms of the underlying metrics, it still suggests that they're competing very strongly as a top 4 team. So, yeah, defence remains strong, albeit the majority of their best work has been done at St James's. I'm just not willing to sort of dismiss them out of hand. I think they can cause City problems and prove problematic in this match. I don't see it being a walkover win, which kind of feeds into Adrian's angle as well. So, yeah, there's just something about City at the minute. I just can't sort of pull the trigger with them. They're not purring to the same sort of levels of old. They are top of all the usual metrics, season long as well as since the World Cup. But yeah, they're not the numbers anywhere near to where they would normally expect them to be in terms of expected goals ratio. And they're only marginally ahead of Newcastle in all of those metrics as well. So, yeah, if Newcastle can kind of wipe away the tears of last weekend, they've had a full midweek to sort of rest, prepare, look at this weekend, go again. I think they can be competitive, but it's not a massive price, obviously, to back Newcastle plus 1.5. But I don't see them getting rolled over comfortably.
Yeah, it's a tough game to call, to be fair. I'm going to lock in Manchester City in under 3.5 goals for our podcast selection, Adrian. 2.38. I just think you get that little bit extra bigger price. And look, it's a tough game to call, to be fair, but really looking forward to that one. Saturday, 12:30 to kick off the weekend. We move on to the third game, and this is just a massive game for the home side here. Southampton at home to Leicester City. This is the Sky Sports game, Saturday, 5:30. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have at matchbook.com. You can currently back Southampton at 2.86. Leicester City favourites away at 2.74. The draw is 3.45. Both teams to score yes is favoured at 1.83. No is 2.12. The Asian handicap line is effectively a draw no bet market, favoured to Leicester City at 1.95 with the total at 2.5, shaded towards the under. So, Mark, this was your game of choice, and people would be surprised. I was anyway earlier in the week when I checked that this was a 5:30 game on Sky. I'm like, Sky are taking a bit of a risk here, but in some ways, the fact that both sides are playing terribly kind of feeds into a really good narrative and potentially a really good game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Leicester because they've just been wonderfully erratic in recent weeks, haven't they? They failed to score against Man United despite that barrage of first half shots and opportunity, and then they go and put in a horrendous display against your boys last weekend, where I think they returned their lowest expected goals figure for years, and Dewsbury Hall's off-target effort from outside the box was their only shot in the match against an Arsenal defence that we'd been talking about, had been creaking since the World Cup. So the obvious elephant in the room was James Maddison's absence. Since the start of last season, Leicester have won 41% of their Premier League games and averaged 1.8 goals when he starts, compared to 17% wins and averaging 1 goal per game when he doesn't start, which is a massive difference and a huge concern, you know, how quickly they can drop off. So he's back and available this weekend after a bit of a sickness bug. So yeah, I expect Leicester to do some damage here in a match that should feature goals. They've got a good record at St Mary's. Everyone remembers the infamous 9-0 game. They're unbeaten in 5 here. They've won 3 of those. And we touched on it previously, but their away games tend to be pretty entertaining, tend to be pretty wild affairs. They've actually got the 4th best goal tally on their travels, but the 3rd worst defence. And those 12 away games have averaged 4.08 goals. 9 have gone over 2.5. Leicester have scored in 10 of 12, scored twice or more in 7 of 12, but kept 3 clean sheets away and conceded twice or more on 9 occasions. So going over old ground as we do, but Leicester have scored in 27 of the last 31 away Premier League games, averaging 1.58 goals, which is 4 clean sheets in that same sample, conceding 2.08 goals. 74% of those matches away from home since the start of last season have seen both teams score. So that would be my first selection here, because Saints are struggling. Embarrassing home loss in the FA Cup midweek, embarrassing recent form, dreadful run of results at St Mary's, winless in 8, losing 6 of those 8 games, losing each of the last 5 actually at home. And if they lose this one, it'll be their 6th consecutive home defeat, their worst run in league history. So a lot for them to kind of pull out of the bag here. But I think because of their situation, 4 points away from safety, they can't afford to come into this match and try and think that a point is going to be enough. They have to be forward thinking and they have to be front foot. Last weekend was desperately poor away at Leeds, but you assume there'll be a reaction. So I think they can and will score against Leicester, but also I think Leicester will absolutely score against the Saints defence, which isn't helping Gavin Bazunu, but he's having a very poor campaign. Don't want to be too harsh on him. He's a 21-year-old in his debut Premier League campaign, but post-shot expected goals is pretty bleak in sort of his corner right now. So Saints have kept just 2 clean sheets all season. 8 of their 11 home matches have seen both teams scoring. They too tend to give teams a decent run at St Mary's. They've only blanked in 6 of their last 30 home games. And Leicester, since the World Cup break, are giving up 2.06 expected goals per game on average, which is a shocking figure. So, 2 selections here. Both teams to score would be my first, but I'm also going to back Leicester on the draw no bet, Leicester +0 at 1.95. They are favourites to win at St Mary's, but they've got a decent record away at bottom half teams. I think the inclusion of Maddison just makes an enormous difference to that front 4, which I think can cause Southampton plenty of problems.
Yeah, but that Maddison stat in particular stands out to me, Adrian.
Is he fit? Is he definitely fit to start?
Yeah, I believe so. I think from what I read, his knee injury was recovered last weekend. It was actually an illness that kept him out.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be interesting how that plays out, Adrian, because like if he is available, you'd have to fancy Leicester. So maybe you're going with the goals angle, but if you were to side with a team, which way would you be swayed?
Oh, Leicester, yeah, for sure. Even though I was at the game and they created just nothing, did they? It was embarrassing really for Leicester against Arsenal, but and they weren't very good by all accounts in the FA Cup defeat to Blackburn Rovers. So both of these sides come into it on the back of being giant killed, so to speak, if that's a word. It's not been a good week for either club. And I agree with Mark's assessment. I mean, he's used up all the stats. So I've got no fresh stats. All my numbers used up by Mark. So well played. But what I will say is that if you think he's right to touch on the game state, a draw's no good to Southampton. They've got to go for it here. And I think Ruben Selles seems like he really wants to please the supporters. Like he's obviously got off to a terrible first impression in the home game, after the euphoria of that win at Chelsea. He'll be really determined to get a win here. And I think he'll send them out aggressively. They play in a 4-4-2 like Hassan Hutel, 4-2-2-2. And he's talked about high pressing. He's talked about being hostile inside the opposition half. Now, Leicester came a cropper trying to play out from the back against Blackburn in that FA Cup defeat. They look really wobbly. I don't think they're great at it, if I'm honest. So that's an avenue that Southampton will target. But then you think about Harvey Barnes, Maddison if he's fit, Iheanacho, Vardy. They have, and Dewsbury Hall, who's a player I've always admired. They've got players that can hurt a Southampton rearguard that's just damaged, and it's so low on confidence. It's unbelievable, really. So both teams to score feels kind of nailed on. I think Mark's definitely on the right lines there. But the reason I've gone with over 2.5 is the price, really. You get a jump from 1.82 to 2.08, I think, for over 2.5 goals. That seems a high price, in my opinion, for a match where you can absolutely not trust either defence. So if you think both teams are going to score, all it needs is one more. And I also think the way that Southampton are playing, Leicester could cover this on their own. I think they can score 2 or 3 goals, no problem, at St Mary's, Leicester City, if they refine a bit of form.
Okay, yeah, selection on Mark here this game, so I'm going to lean towards the both teams to score. Slightly safer option at 1.82, but there are a couple of shouts. One for over 2.5 goals with Adrian at 2.06, and Mark's other selection at Leicester in the draw no bet market at around 1.95 now. So we're checking them out before. And incidentally, any bets that are put up tonight or today throughout the podcast will be available on insights.matchbook.com. We'll move to the final game, the choice of Adrian. Chelsea at home to Leeds. Again, another fascinating game. I don't know if it's this time of year, guys, when I'm finding all these games tricky to call and really exciting. I'm looking forward to watching them. But Chelsea at home to Leeds, Saturday, 3 o'clock. We'll take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. Chelsea 1.69 Leeds available at 6.0. The draw is 4.1. Both teams to score yes is 1.9 favoured in that market. And the Asian handicap line sees Leeds get a 1-goal start. Good bit favoured there, 1.81. And the total is 2.5 goals, shaded towards the over. So yeah, Adrian, I was sort of initially just, you get taken aback by that. You know how terrible Leeds' form has been. And then you see them at Stamford Bridge at 6.0 away, where they would have been double figures during the Haiti days of Tuchel, I presume. So where can you stand with that? It's just Graham Potter's Chelsea at the moment. Just can't seem to get any sort of thing going or any momentum going on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good fixture, isn't it? Chelsea Leeds has a historical rivalry anyway. You got Leeds rocking up with a new manager, fighting for their lives, and you've got Chelsea's pretty new manager, desperate for a win. I mean, if they were to get beaten here, would they pull the trigger on Potter? I think there's a possibility
chance
they might. You know, he seems consumed by pressure. I think he's admitted it's impacted him, and I'm not surprised. And the team, just no cohesion, no rhythm at all. Is it any surprise that they haven't got any rhythm when they've got so many players? It's just way too many players for any manager, I think, to handle or get a grip on. So I have to oppose Chelsea. I just have to. I can't. It's not that I'm in love with this Leeds team, because I'm not. I do think that Nonto and Somerville, Harrison are good away players. I do think that. I think that in a counter-attacking side on their travels, they can carry the ball upfield and cause Chelsea problems in this match. So a little bit like they did at Liverpool when they got their only away win, Leeds United. So yeah, look out for those guys. But it's Chelsea. You can't really get on side with Chelsea, not just because of their recent form, but just across the campaign as a whole. They've laboured, they've limped to victories when they have won. So if you think about a +1 handicap for the opposition in 21 of 24 Chelsea games this season, it doesn't lose us money. Okay, so it's just 3 out of 24 where this particular bet would lose us cash. We'd actually win money rather than get it back in 16 of 24 Chelsea games. So, they're not covering the handicaps at all, Chelsea. And, based on their recent form, which is, you could argue, is deteriorating, then you've got a chance. You've also got the new manager bounce of Javi Gracia. I don't think he's the greatest manager in the world, but what he is certainly a steadier hand than the guy he's replaced, Jesse Marsh. It will be less chaotic, I think, less frantic, and they will give up less opportunities than Jesse Marsh's side would do. And I do like the midfield axis, particularly on the road where there's less emphasis on creating. I do like the Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, all American duo, because they've got bite and they will protect and they'll fight and scrap and they'll make this hard for Chelsea. So yeah, all in all, I think Chelsea fans will rock up at Stamford Bridge at the weekend feeling quite edgy, pretty nervous and not confident of a win. And if they get a win, I wouldn't see it being a landslide. So for me, Leeds +1 offers okay value here.
Yeah, it definitely feels the safest. And Mark, you're in broad agreement. A little bit on Chelsea. Were there small signs alive in the Tottenham game? Maybe that first 20, 30 minutes when they were maybe a pass off, a really good attack, and then a corner, and then a momentum building? Or is that just reading too much into trying to see good signs for Graham Potter?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there were some signs of positivity, and I do think some of the results have been a little bit harsh on him. I go back to the Dortmund game in the Champions League. Chelsea were by far and away the better team on the night, but came away with nothing. Didn't take their opportunities. Dortmund did, caught them out, and they're left with nothing to show for their efforts. And yeah, we've seen it similarly in the Southampton game. They were pretty horrendous for a lot of it, but they did create opportunities. And yeah, but this isn't a pretty game to try and analyse, but almost backing Leeds +1 is the default option because you can't do anything else here, because Chelsea, the numbers are negative and are starting to really pile up on Graham Potter, unfortunately, and the pressure is building, as Adrian says. But just to recap some of them on Chelsea, it's very difficult to back a team below 1.7 when they've lost 3 on the spin in all competitions without scoring. A Chelsea team with 2 wins in the last 15 Premier League games. That's their worst run in a 15-game sample since 1995. They haven't scored more than 1 goal in the last 9 Premier League games, scoring just 4 goals in that sample. They've scored 23 goals in 24 Premier League games this season. That's their worst return at this stage of a season since 1994. Across all competitions, they failed to score in 10 of the last 15, and now they've got their talisman, Thiago Silva, injured and out of action, which is a big blow for that defence. So, yeah, I guess the positive, if you want to be about Chelsea, is they've won 5 of 6 at home to the bottom half. They're playing a Leeds team with the worst away record in the league in terms of matches won and points earned. But, and it's a big but Adrian touched on it too, Javi Gracia's appointment should breathe a bit more fire into this team, a bit more cohesion, a bit more structure into Leeds. I think they can be a robust and difficult team to knock out of the way when they are structured. They weren't as chaotic against Southampton last week, and they toned down the pressing. They're a bit more process-driven with the ball, stretched the pitch out wide, and when the ball was turned over, they're a bit more organised and capable of getting back into position, which is a big plus. So, yeah, it's hard to see Chelsea winning this game or blowing Leeds out of the water. So I think I'm probably a bit more positive about Gracia's appointment with Leeds. I think he did very good things at Watford. I think he was harshly sacked, very premature there. I think his time in Spain proves he's capable of kind of getting underdogs on side, particularly when sort of written off at big away grounds and making them competitive. So, yeah, I'd be surprised if Chelsea won this game breezily. So I think sort of Leeds +1 is almost the default option here. Leeds have actually only lost by 2 goals or more on 4 occasions, which kind of surprised me considering their plight.
Yeah, and Adrian touched on the stat and not covering the handicap themselves. So default option, I think, is a good way of putting it, guys. Yeah, Leeds +1 goal at 1.81. And fascinating how Graham Potter and Chelsea fare for the rest of the season and whether Chelsea do pull the trigger. We've touched on this before, but I think Arteta was lucky in the sense he had lockdown football, so no fans during his terrible run. Unfortunately, Potter and Adrian touched on the fans. They'll have 42,000 in Stamford Bridge on Saturday. So we'll go to EFL Bets. Before we do, quick recap of what we've selected in the Premier League. Now, all of these selections will be available on Matchbook Insights. Manchester United to cover a quarter goal head start, 1.79. City and under 3.5 goals, 2.38. Both teams to score 1.82 in Southampton versus Leicester, and Leeds +1 goal at 1.81. We will go to EFL. And Mark, a rare selection for you in the EFL League 2. This will be a popular bet on the coupon, I suggest, at least in the match odds. But you like Carlisle to cover the Asian handicap at about 1.84 versus Grimsby.
Yeah, this is very much a kind of circumstantial selection. Carlisle are an excellent team. They've been on a wonderful journey under Paul Simpson, who returned to kind of save them from relegation, has them now running in the promotion, ranks them in the top 3 in League 2, back-to-back wins, including thrashing Crawley 5-2 last week, 8 wins in 12 at home to teams outside the top 10. They're a pretty strong force at the best of times, almost always competitive regardless of their opponents. And they're playing a Grimsby team, obviously, on the back of the Wednesday night heroics in the FA Cup. It's a long way from Grimsby to Southampton. It's a long journey home, should we say. I can't imagine they'll have been home anytime before 4 a.m. after that bus journey. And I'd be shocked if they didn't indulge in a couple of beers on that bus journey. So, pulled off a hugely historic result for the club. Every right to sort of celebrate it. Thursday is essentially a write-off for Grimsby. It'll be rest, recovery. Paul Hurst, the Grimsby manager, talked about very tired bodies in the changing room after the Saints win. So Friday, presume it'll be a very light session. And then they've got to travel to Carlisle, which again is a decent trek from Grimsby. So very, very little time to rest, recover and prepare. Carlisle, on the other hand, full midweek to rest and prepare. Just has to be a home win. I think Grimsby have admitted that their league form has taken a bit of a dip whilst their cup exploits have been going so well. This is a very difficult away day when you're on the back of such a sort of hugely emotional and physical performance as Wednesday night.
Yeah, and on to you, Adrian. It's similar. You're going to be backing a team that played in the FA Cup, but a number of circumstances are in your favour. It was, Lancashire is closer to Leicestershire than the one Mark outlined there as well. But also Blackburn, they've been in brilliant form and they had a massive win there on Tuesday night. So they'll be buzzing going into their game against Sheffield United.
Yeah, it's a big game at the top end of the Championship, Blackburn against Sheffield United. Both produced cup upsets, didn't they? It was superb efforts from the respective teams. But I just looked at the prices of this match and I thought they're not really giving Blackburn Rovers enough respect in the market. They're at home. They're 4th place. And I know the metrics aren't great around Blackburn, and Mark's talked about that before. And, they've been very efficient in terms of their victories. but they've claimed victories nonetheless. They've got an outstanding home record. They've won 11 of 16 at Ewood Park this season. Yeah, so that's a pretty high percentage. They don't gift that many goals away. And Sheffield United have been a little bit unconvincing in recent weeks. Their form has been a little bit off, particularly at the back. Some of their defensive players have struggled. And believe it or not, for anyone that didn't see the Sheffield United Spurs game, they made 8 changes. They had an illness bug going through the camp. So a number of players weren't well enough to feature, or they weren't well enough to start the game. Most of them were key men. So, I mean, that's some result against Spurs. And I know that Spurs rotated, but come on, that's a shocker for Tottenham to go out to the Blades, to basically almost a reserve team Blades. So, yeah, shame on them. But in terms of this game, that illness issue, I think, is a possible factor, as is the form. And Blackburn come into it with 3 wins on the trot. Before that, 4 draws on the trot. So they're unbeaten in 7. Ben Brereton Diaz, the star man, is back from injury for this one. He would have played in the cup game, but was suspended in the FA Cup, so he couldn't. And Sheffield United's manager as well, Paul Heckingbottom, has got a touchline ban that will keep him up in the stands for this as well. So, yeah, a lot of it points towards being a really close game, a competitive game. So to get Blackburn and a draw on side with a plus a half goal handicap, it's too good to turn down for me at 1.86. So, yeah, that's my thinking.
Okay, yeah, seems they'll be a lot closer than the market suggests, perhaps. So take Blackburn with the half a goal start at 1.86. And yeah, interest on that Tottenham. I can't believe they didn't go for the FA Cup with Manchester City and Manchester United, 2 of the big 6 left in the cup. Adrian, it's madness.
It is madness. Honestly, obviously, it pleases me greatly. I'm not going to lie. On the night Arsenal go 5 points clear, to see Tottenham dumped out of the cup by Sheffield United, it makes me deliriously happy. But if I'm a Spurs fan, I'm besides myself with rage that Kane hasn't started the game. They haven't gone in with a strong team. Sheffield United were weakened. It's not their fault they were weakened either. Illness in a football dressing room is as bad as it gets, because it's a physical game. You've got to run around. It's pathetic, really. Yeah, because now they're looking, really, Manchester United and Manchester City, with all due respect to Brighton, the cup is likely to be won by either of those two sides. Spurs are a team that can beat City, aren't they? We know that. So what a wasted opportunity. If the draw had gone in their favour, Spurs would be in a Wembley Cup semi-final, no problem. 2 wins away from finally ending that drought. It's very poor decision from the management team there.
Yeah, and look, for what it's worth, I know the Tottenham fans I was talking to last night weren't too happy with the selections either. We'll complete our bets in each league in England on Saturday. We'll go Ipswich at home to Burton, and Ipswich are high flying. Adrian, you fancy them here? Oh, and combining it with over 2.5 goals gives us a 1.9 price.
Yeah, exactly. Like Ipswich are obviously chasing promotion, automatic promotion. Burton are fighting relegation. So Ipswich are a very short price, but you can get them on side if you back them and over 2.5 goals. Now, if you look at Burton's away games, 11 of their 16 have gone over 2.5 goals. They're not a side that keep very many clean sheets. Just one all season for the Brewers away from the Pirelli Stadium. So yeah, defensively they're not robust, and Ipswich have a great attack, but they do score. They've scored in 12 of 16 on the road, so they might be worth a goal. But now being in this particular game, as for Ipswich home games, 56% have gone overs. They've scored in all but one home game and 14 goals in their last 5 home games for Ipswich Town. So they're almost averaging 3 a game in recent weeks. So they're beginning to fire, Ipswich. Burton can entertain, they can score, but they're pretty leaky. I've seen them in the flesh a couple of times. They're not a brilliant side. So I would absolutely fancy a home win here, and for Ipswich to score 2 or 3 goals against sides outside of the top 8. Ipswich have scored at least 2 goals in 16 of 24 games. So yeah, against the sort of less strong teams at League One level, Ipswich almost always score at least 2 often 3. They can do that here.
Okay, Mark has filed 2 Matchbook Insight selections. They're available right now. They were filed Thursday morning on Matchbook Insights. But you also have another selection to add to that, Mark, in League On.
Yeah, well, there's a lot I like in Europe this weekend, which is quite
Okay.
handy, really. So I'm hoping I've chosen
Yeah.
wisely for you in this segment. We're going to go to France. Rams against Ajaccio. Rams have been one of the sort of stories of the season in European football. I'm sure it's been well documented. Everyone's well aware now of their half Belgian, half English head coach, Will Still, who's gaining lots of attention over the past few months for his sterling work, a 30-year-old. Without the required qualifications actually to be coaching in Ligue 1. So his team get fined every time he appears on the touchline to coach his team. But such is their kind of optimism or they're just so well aware of his ability. He continues to sort of be there whilst he's sort of studying for his qualifications. His team are unbeaten in Ligue 1 since he took charge on an interim basis back in mid-October. That's a 16-game sample. Only PSG, Nice and Monaco have earned more points than Rams in that sample. Rams haven't actually lost since September, actually, and their home record has been absolutely exceptional under Still. 6 wins, 2 draws, 0 defeats, 17 scored, 4 conceded. The 2 draws, 0-0 at home to PSG and 0-0 at home to Nice, who are kind of a rejuvenated team. They've actually held PSG home and away under Still. The most recent 3 home results, 3-0 against a very lively Toulouse, 4-0 against struggling Troyes, and 4-2 against Lorient. They've scored 3 goals or more in 4 of the last 5 at home. And they're playing a Ajaccio team who are just rotten, particularly when they play away from home. It'll be a minor miracle if they stay up this season with 4 teams going down. They're a very poor team. The squad is basically Ligue 2 standard. Their recent results kind of highlight the fact that they're out of their comfort zone in this division. 7 defeats in 9 in 2023. The 2 wins they did earn came against no hopers Angers. More about them later. And Troyes, as I said, who'll be going down as well, alongside Angers and Ajaccio. 3 desperately poor teams in that division. Their record overall this season against teams outside of the bottom 4: 2 wins, 2 draws, 16 defeats. So 16 defeats in 20, 13 goals scored, 43 conceded, the worst away non-penalty expected goals record in the division when playing away. Rams have won by 2 or more goals and 4 of the last 5 at home. You can back them to cover a -3/4 Asian handicap angle here at 1.89 or 1.85 as it is now. Basically, we get paid if Rams win the match with a full stakes payout if they win by 2 goals or more. That should be a bit of a home banker.
Okay, yeah, very confident selection in League On. Mark has a few scattered throughout the European cards, so do check out Matchbook Insights, as I touched on there.
That's not even his best bet.
That's not even his best bet. I had a quick second look. Yeah. Stay tuned for that. Great sales pitch there, Adrian. But take it away with your long shots. You've been in good form in these in recent weeks. You're going for correct score in the Premier League.
I am. Now, this is quite interesting. 1-1 is the Premier League's most common scoreline so far this season. I think it's happened 27 times. And I thought I'm going to look around. Which game looks most 1-all-ish? And straight away I went to Aston Villa against Crystal Palace. I'll tell you why. Aston Villa have had 5 1-alls so far this season. Aston Villa have 5. Palace have had 3. Or was that the other way around? I need to check that. I think I wrote it down that Villa have 5 and Palace have had 3. Anyway, between them, they've had 8 1-all draws so far this season. And that represents a 29.6% share of all 1-1 draws in the Premier League this campaign. Just 2 teams covering it. I think it's Palace that have got the 5. But quite remarkable, really. Palace have been on a run of draws, 5 in their last 6. 3 of those were 1 apiece as well. So I think that in general, there's about an 11% chance if you want to back a 1-all, it's about an 11% shot when it's a Crystal Palace game. That rises to 20.8%. So the odds are shortened quite significantly. So 7.2.
Yeah,
feels good.
Best price out there on the odds checker grid right now on Thursday, 2:00 as we record. 1-all, 7.2. Most of the sportsbook have that at 6.0, which seems to be, based on what Adrian has said, around the right price there as well. So, Mark, this week you've gone a long way for your correct score. You're going to La Liga Santander 2. Is it just known as 2 in Spain, or how do you say it?
I call it Segunda, the second division.
Okay.
Yeah, I got some numbers as well, kind of like Adrian, really. We're going to Burgos against Granada, looking for a 0-0 draw here at 6.4, which looks kind of tight for a goalless game. The 6.4 suggests there's about a 16% chance of a 0-0. Now, Burgos have already been involved in 8 0-0 draws already this season. That's 28%. And the 0-0 is actually the second most common scoreline in the Segunda overall, with a 15% share. So, despite kind of Burgos and Granada actually being pretty rotten in terms of what they produce going forward in their home and away games, the kind of market is suggesting it's kind of just an average opportunity here for a 0-0. Whereas you look at the numbers, Burgos' games are averaging just 1.38 goals. Granada's away games, 1.79. The two teams have collectively played 58 Segunda games. They've contributed 33 clean sheets in those 58. That's 57%. Granada have failed to score in 9 of 14 away. They've only scored 7 away goals. And Burgos have failed to score in 3 of 8 at home to the top half. 2 of their last 4 have also ended goalless. So we've effectively got 2 of the best defences on show. A 6-pointer with promotion and playoff hopes on the line. Just very difficult to see this game escalating into anything like an open, expansive or game or a shootout, really. And just on the Segunda, averaging just 1.94 goals. 43% of matches in this division have featured 0 or 1 goal overall. So I think 6.4 on a 0-0 game, considering the circumstances, is actually quite a good value selection.
Yeah, I'm definitely. Look, the guys have smashed it with the correct score homework here. I'm going to be looking for loads of nil-alls throughout La Liga Santander, or not Santander, sorry, Segunda, La Liga Segunda, and then 1-alls throughout the Premier League. So well done to the guys there. Best bets time, and we'll stay with you, Mark. So this is your best European bet on the card. On a weekend, you've said you have loads of bets on the European card, so no pressure at all.
I'm going to hype the pressure up even more, actually.
Oh, no.
I think this is one of my best bets of the season.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, setting myself up for a fall. Montpellier to win at home to Angers, a Montpellier team who have shown real signs of life since Mikel Dezarkarian returned to the club last month. He was there for 4 years, left at the end of the 2020-21 campaign. 7 points from 9 since he's returned, including a really good point against Lens last weekend when they were missing their star playmaker, Teji Savanier. Through suspension, he's available again, as is their young hotshot, Eli Wally, who's actually being tracked by Arsenal, a young forward, really exciting player. Montpellier won 7 of 10 against the bottom 6 already this season. They're trending upwards. They won't be getting relegated, and they're hosting an Angers team who are, quite frankly, an embarrassment. They are the worst team in the division by a long stretch. They're already planning for Ligue 2 next season. They're 11 points from survival already. They've lost 19 of 25 league games this season, including 9 of 12 away. They scored just 7 goals on their travels, conceded 25. And I think the most damning, the most embarrassing statistic I can give you is their record since September's international break, which reads 0 wins, 2 draws, and 15 defeats. So that's 2 points from a possible 51 on offer since September's international break. But as I say, we're getting 1.85 on a home team who are showing good form with key players fit and available against an away team who've lost 19 of 25 all season. It's really quite straightforward for me. Just back the home win.
Yeah, very laid out, very simply there for Mark O'Hare. And I suggest, Adrian, this case is very simple as well. For those, producer Ryan sent me Mick McCarthy's reaction to being asked, can he turn it around ahead of Burnley on Saturday? And there was just no answer really in the 7-second clip. He looked a defeated man. He's a man who's been on the pay, looking for the pay ever since he left the Ireland job. So he's been at Apoel, Cardiff City and Blackpool. Each has gotten significantly worse. And there's definitely not much hope for them against Burnley this weekend.
It's a tough gig, yeah. Look, very much along the same lines as Mark here. It's just a way to back a heavy favourite. Burnley were described, weren't they, by Neil Warnock last weekend. And Neil Warnock, love him or loathe him, knows a thing or two about the Championship. He said they're the best team he's seen in 25 years at that level. They've been unbelievable. The quality of their football, Burnley's, is just different gravy compared to anything else in that league. Really sophisticated play. They score goals. They don't give a lot away. They've lost twice all season. And in the Championship, that is no mean feat. Across the last 22 matches, Burnley have won 18. They are just flying. They're a phenomenal team. And Blackpool are bang average. Well, they're worse than bang average. They've lost 3 of their last 4. They've got a shocking record against the better teams in the Championship this season. At home to the top 7, they've played 5, lost 5, and scored 1 goal in those matches. And none of the teams they've faced at Bloomfield Road have been of Burnley's quality. So, and the form table as well. They're second bottom of that. QPR are the only team across the last 10 games with a worse record than Blackpool. So for me to back Burnley here, knowing that I'm making a profit if they win the game, it's fantastic. I'm all over that. And obviously we get the full stakes win if they win by more than 1 goal. But if it's just a single goal victory, we're still up, but just by half. So yeah, this is one I couldn't turn my back on. Burnley should absolutely canter to a win. The only sticking point is the pitch. It's not a good surface at Bloomfield Road, but I think Burnley are good enough to overcome that.
Yeah, listen, that's a couple of confident selections in the best bets. Pro Montpellier and pro Burnley cases laid out by both Mark and Adrian. We are done. A reminder and a heads up to anyone listening on the football podcast only listeners, to do check out our Cheltenham preview night we recorded last night with Tom Stanley and all the gang. Really fun night, well worth checking out, and a lot of those clips will be going up on YouTube ahead of the Cheltenham Festival and on Tuesday week. Myself, Mark, Adrian and Miguel will be back Monday 1 p.m. to have a look at the Champions League as that rolls back into town. But now take care, enjoy the weekend's football, and we'll chat to you on Monday. Bye bye.